Hey dudes and dudettes, it's me, E.H. Ivins, your Uncle Herbie, and this is another episode of The Dad You Wish You Had. Today, we're going to talk about, I think, something that's very, very common. I got a question from a mom. Her name is Catherine. Catherine wrote me. She has two sons. Okay, we'll call them Son A and Son B. I'm not going to give them names. Son A does everything the right way. Son B always seems to find a way to do it the wrong way. I'm being simplistic, but you know, it's interesting, and you know this as a parent yourself. I had four children, same father, two different mothers, but basically the same values, same everything else, same environment, and they're all four radically different people. Now, they're all four great people, but they're all radically different people. And so you can have two sons, do everything exactly the same way with both of them, teach them the same values, go through the same hoops, but you know, a child's nature, at least through experience, I would tell you, I think it's 50-50. 50% nurture, 50% nature. In other words, half of your child is how you raise them and the other half is how they're wired. And that can't be changed. Now, that brings me to her question, which is it appropriate to use child A as an example when child B messes up? Okay, in other words, Bobby did it great, why can't you be like Bobby? Or some version of that. Now, you can make it nicer, but no matter how you say it, that's how the child is going to hear it. Boy or girl, that's how they're going to hear it. If you say to any child, okay, why can't you be more like Bobby? You're going to do nothing but breed resentment in the child that you are tacitly saying is inferior to the one that's doing it the right way. Let me just share an anecdote from my childhood, and this wasn't with a sibling. I was the oldest, okay? I was the firstborn, the son. I do have a younger sister, a half-sister by my stepfather. She's 7 years younger than me, and while we got along great growing up, we never had sibling rivalry, and this was never an issue between us because of the age difference. It was just a huge age disparity, and so, you know, she was playing with dolls, I was driving cars, and I was a boy and she was a girl, and so it just never ran into each other. But when children are closer together, this happens, and in my case, that wasn't the case. In my case, it was Bob Diskin, okay? Bob Diskin, who is my age now, and wherever you are, I'm sure he's a great guy, and I love him. A little background, I was born in Miami Beach, Florida. I was raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. One of my friends, another Jewish kid, it's relevant to the story only because my mother being a soft bigot, you know, Jews can be bigots just like people can be bigoted against us. You know, Jews are no more crazy about Gentiles persecuting than the Gentiles doing the persecution. You know, let me just be honest with you. So my mother was kind of a bigot, to be honest, in her way. But anyway, so Bob Diskin was another Jewish boy, and he was an overachiever. Bob did everything right. He was a very, very, I don't know, for all I know, he grew up to be a drug pusher. I'm sure he's a doctor or a lawyer somewhere. I'm sure he had a wonderful career. I'm sure he's happy. And if any of you know Bob Diskin, tell him that Herbie said hi. But anyway, having said all that, I could never become Bob Diskin's friend as a kid. I wanted to be Bob Diskin's friend. I wanted to hang out with Bob Diskin, but I grew to hate Bob Diskin because every time I was a rebellious kid. I'll be honest with you, I did things my own way for lots of reasons that I'll get into as we go through these various podcasts, and I relate my answers to personal anecdotes because my experience is really where a lot of my advice comes from. And in this case, I was Bob Diskined to death, to the point where this wonderful, nice kid became, I used to hate to see him because it was going to get thrown in my face. You know, I just couldn't be Bob Diskin any more than Bob Diskin could be me. And it bred a lot of resentment because I remember thinking as a kid, can't my mom see all the things I'm great at? I mean, I was good at lots of things. I was a very good student. But I wasn't a straight A student. Why wasn't I a straight A student? Because I hated math. Now, Bob Diskin was a straight A student who got A's in math, and all I heard from my mother was, why can't you get straight A's like Bob Diskin? Mind you, my grade point average when I graduated from high school was 3.85. Okay, it's not like I had a bad grade point average. I had a great grade point average. I got a couple of B's in math, but to my mother, that wasn't good enough. I remember one time, this is no kidding, if you want just a story of how people can get crazy with their kids. I'll never forget, one day I was in junior high school. I went to Mellon Junior High School in Mount Lebanon, which is a suburb of Pittsburgh. And Mellon's gone now. I don't even think it still exists. It might, I don't know. But anyway, I think I was in the 7th grade, and in those days, and I think it's still true because my kids used to get these from their schools. They would have these midterm home notices that would get mailed home. Now, the only reason you would get a midterm home notice was either you were doing very, very well or very, very badly. So one day I'm in class, and over the PA system comes, the voice, "Would Herbie please come down to Mr. News' office?" Okay, well, Mr. News' office was the assistant principal, and I'm thinking, what did I do? Because as much as I went my own way in many ways, I was not a troublemaker. In fact, if anything, I was kind of a teacher's pet. So I was kind of shocked to hear my name being called down to Mr. News' office. So I go down to Mr. who, by the way, his name was Herbie too, but that's neither here nor there. So I get called down to Mr. News' office, and sure enough, there's my mother. And I'm like shocked, and I'm thinking, who died, right? I mean, my first thought is, oh my God, someone in our family died. She's pulling me out of school. She said not a word. She just took me from his office out to the car. We get in the car, and she reaches over, and she planted her fingernails. I kid you not. Yes, my mother was a little overwrought. Planted her fingernails in my arm so hard that she drew blood. And then, as I yelled, "Ow," she threw into my lap a home notice from French class. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I was a straight A student in French. The only reason I would have gotten a home notice was one of those good ones, right? But that wasn't the case. This one said I was failing French. But I looked at it, and it took me all of 30 seconds to realize this was a practical joke being played on me by my then best friend, Jeff. Now, how did I know? Because the handwriting was clearly the handwriting of an adolescent. But when people get crazy, they start to believe crazy things. And my mother didn't stop for a moment to look and see, obviously, this was a child's handwriting. She just went ape and went after me right away because in the end, my mother was living vicariously through me, or so I felt, and was comparing me to other kids. And the idea that I wasn't getting an A in French was just intolerable to her. Now, let me bring this back around. And this whole, I just share this with you because I can relate to how a child might feel on the other end of this, is what I'm saying to you. The idea that you hold up one of your own children, especially, as superior to another is insane. Never, ever do that. You've got to, I don't want to say, I hate the term snowflake because of the political implication that carries these days, but children are all unique, okay? They're who they're going to be. And you really can't, again, back to the nurture-nature thing, you can smooth the edges, but who they are is who they are, okay? So if you have a child that's, for example, not particularly academic, and you hold up them against the child you have that is, A, you're asking them to accomplish the impossible, and B, you're gonna make them hate their own sibling. I just saw, and I'm not changing the subject, I was just looking at on YouTube at a video of musicians that hate each other, and two of them that hate each other that kind of shocked me. One of my favorite groups from the 1960s and the British invasion is the Kinks. I love the Kinks. Well, the Kinks were founded by two brothers, and the Davies brothers, and they hate each other. And the reason the Kinks broke up in 1992 ultimately, and have never gotten back together since, and to this day they're still both alive, and they hated each other. And as it turns out, they hated each other from birth. They hated each other at home. Their mother joked that if one could have smothered the other in the crib, they would have. You cannot create this rivalry between your children because it will survive you. Okay, this will create a lifelong resentment. You don't want to make, and that, by the way, and you didn't ask about this, but I'm going to bring it up anyway because it's relevant. Fast forward to one day when you're older. Okay, I think I've made my point. Do not hold up any child, let alone a sibling, as an example for another child. They are who they are. If you want them to work harder or do other things, work with them individually and never, ever, ever mention another example of a child that they might know unless you want to poison that relationship forever. Okay, now, fast forward, pretend you're my age, and now you're writing your last will and testament and or a trust of some kind, and you're going to leave your money to your children. I cannot tell you. Now, for years and years and years, one of my past careers is I did a lot of financial planning work. And most of my clients, because I live in the Southwest, were older. And consequently, they were writing a lot of wills and trusts. And as their financial advisor, I would get involved in this often to help retitle, move things, do things that the lawyer directed needed to be done to get all these affairs in order. Now, one of the things that always blew my mind was watching people treat their children unequally. In other words, I have 4 children. My will says very simply, to each equally, and if they, God forbid, die before me, then to their heirs, their share goes. That's it. Very simple. But I saw lots and lots and lots of parents where they were treating children unequally, and for lots of reasons. Sometimes, for example, in one instance, it was or several instances actually, they hated who their kids were married to. They were afraid that if they left their money to their children straight out and without strings attached or without a reduced amount or whatever it might be, that this son-in-law or daughter-in-law would get their greasy mitts on it, and they would waste it, and so on and so forth. Another thing was spendthrift children. You know, they would have, let's say, 2 children, and one child would be very, very responsible, and the other child very, very spendthrift. And so they'd leave most of the money to the responsible child because the spendthrift kid would just blow it. And this would make my eyes roll back in my head. And this is what I told them, and this is what I'm going to tell you. When you write your wills at the end of life, and this is on this exact same subject line, I'm just expanding it later, treat your children equally, because this is your immortality we're talking about. Let's put aside the religious discussion. I'm talking about the memory you leave with your children, okay? If you want to poison that memory forever, try controlling your money from the grave and treating children unequally. Look, one child has done everything the way you think they should and another child hasn't, so what? Get over yourself. You are not that perfect. Leave your money to your children. You're going to be dead, okay? You're not going to have any idea what's going on with your money. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they keep it or they waste it. It's theirs. You're dead, okay? All you should care about is the memory, and you want it to be, obviously, I think, a loving memory of how mom loved me no matter what, dad loved me no matter what. So leave your things to your children equally and no strings attached. You know, oh, well, I have a child who's a drug addict. Look, you're not going to save them that way, okay? Don't put strings. Just leave your assets, leave them cleanly, and forget it. Stop trying to control, I mean, not that I'm saying that you are, but if the temptation comes into your mind to set up trusts and strings and payouts and everything else, and to control things from the grave, get over that, okay? Don't do that. You will destroy your memory in your children's minds. And what if they blow through it? Then they blow through it, and they live with the consequences of their actions, which is a far better teacher than anything you could say verbally, okay? You know, it is consequences that teach us everything. One of the problems that we have in our lives is if we shelter our children too much from the consequences of what they do, they don't learn. If you touch a hot stove, you've got to get burnt, okay? That's as simple as that. If you inherit money from your parents and you blow it, that's a lesson, okay? You may not get it, but you'll be dead. What do you care? At least they won't hate you for it, okay? That's all I'm saying. Don't poison the well. Don't play your children off each other. And by the way, that's the other thing. You treat children unequally. Let's say you had 4 children and one of them was, in your mind, a screw up, so you gave the 3 of them their money outright and the other one you set up a trust fund. All you're going to do is cause sibling rivalries that'll go on forever and ever in a family that hates each other to the day they die. This went on, by the way, in my mother's family. When my mother died, and she died at the age of 50 of kidney cancer. At her funeral, half her siblings weren't there. She came from a large family. There were 7 children. 3 of them weren't at her funeral because of a fight that began over money in my grandparents' estate because the children were not treated equally. And they still hate each other. The last survivors, and it's down to, I think, 2 aunts now, still hate each other over it. I mean, that's the legacy of playing one child off against another. Okay, that's enough. I've made my point. Before I go away today, I just want to remind you to pick up a copy of The Terrarium. The Terrarium is a coming-of-age story that I wrote. It's a novella. A novella means it's not as long as a novel. It's a couple of 100 pages. You can read it in an afternoon with a cup of tea in a quiet room and some quiet music in the background. And it's a delightful story that I think you'll really, really enjoy. All 5- and 4-star reviews on Amazon. You can pick up your copy on Amazon either in paperback or download it onto your e-reader. And if you're an Amazon Prime reader, a Prime member, I should say, and use an e-reader like a Kindle, you can borrow it from the Kindle Lending Library and read it for free. Please read it. It helps support this podcast, and it's a win-win. You'll get a wonderful story that'll make you laugh and cry, and you'll just have a wonderful time with it. And, you know, I'll make a couple of dollars, and we'll all live happily ever after, and, you know, what's wrong with that? Also, before you go, right above my head, it says My Other Dad, 844-935-0444. That is the number to send me your questions. Please send me your questions. Anything at all, anything but politics and religion. I'll answer questions about anything else, and happily do so. And then you can take it, use it, not use it. But, for the over half of America that grew up without a father, or with a father who was at least emotionally not present, I think I have something valuable to offer to you in terms of advice. At least I hope you agree with that, given the videos that we've done so far here in the nascent stage of The Dad You Wish You Had. Also, please click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and given we've just started this, almost nobody has, so click it. Also, share this with your friends, because we are not yet in the YouTube search algorithm, because we need at least 45 episodes, and the only other way we're going to get this spread until then is for you to share it with your friends. Please share it with your friends, and click the notification button so you know I'll be putting up, and I have been putting up and will continue to do so, hopefully until, I can't anymore physically, 2 episodes per week. And I hope you've been enjoying them. And that's it for today. Thank you very, very much for joining me. And until next time, this is your Uncle Herbie, E.H. Ivins, the dad you wish you had, saying so long.